Thank you, Mr. Memani, Mr. Manian, Rahul, Mr. Pai. It's a great panel we have put together, and like Chandra mentioned, it's a mix of people who do things, people who advise, people who finance, and the context. I think it decides itself, which is managing disruption, and there are two major disruptions going on. One, of course, is by the global situation, and the other is a technology-led disruption, and both I think are probably one more potent than the other. So let me start by asking Mr. Memani first, that in this global situation, and things are changing so rapidly, and you advise CEOs and you advise organizations, as of today, when there is so much uncertainty, what would be your advice? Is this the time to revisit business models, revenue models, supply chains? And supply chain, I think it keeps coming up in every conversation these days. And Mr. Pai, it talks about risk management a lot. So let's start with, as of today, what would be your advice to CEOs?
Right now, we are not advising. Companies are busy and trying to act and figure out how do you deal with the present. But I can tell you what I'm observing. I don't think advising is the right word, but I would say what I'm observing companies do and how they're engaging with their various stakeholders. The first, I would say it varies and fluctuates a lot from industry to industry. But given the question you've asked, I would say I'd probably address companies and organizations that are more impacted by the current geopolitical impact. I would say the first thing companies across are first trying to see, are really testing, and they have tested, but they're really testing their supply chain in a far more rigorous and robust way, assuming various scenarios, whether this goes for 15 days, 30 days, 45 days, 6 months, 8 months, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And I think that probably is the most, and also short-term, medium-term, long-term, what do they need to do? So I think that probably I would say is something that one is seeing. Also, in that particularly, anything that has to do with energy or its derivative products, that flow from their petrochemicals. And some companies are also very keenly looking at trying to say that how can they ensure that their, one is obviously pricing, which is very market determined, but availability of supply is becoming a big issue for a lot of those companies. So they are trying to see how they leverage their relationships, whether it's with the partners, vendors, suppliers, leveraging government policy to try and see how they navigate that. I think I would say that probably is the most important thing that we are seeing. Secondly, sort of broader risk management outside of supply chain, I think that's becoming more and more critical. To answer your question, I definitely do think what we have seen that has happened in the last 12 months, starting with, you could say the India-Pakistan tariffs, beginning of this year, what we saw through AI, various geopolitical conflicts, but the biggest one being the current one they are facing. Yes. I think companies who have done long-range planning are certainly trying to create more cushions in their capital allocation model. And they are testing their capital allocation models to see, if there were events that happen in any of these areas, so you would say energy, geopolitics, which are quite related, and technology and AI-related changes, are they adequately prepared for that? Right. So I think that is another area that is there. And AI is a different subject completely. I won't touch on that. But I think prior to I would say what we saw dealing with tariffs, as that got settled, a lot of emphasis, focus on AI with what happened at the beginning of the year. But right now, in the last 1 month, 3.5 weeks, I think this current issue has consumed a lot of time.
Yes, this seems to make the tariff situation look better, isn't it? Yeah. But you were talking about how long will this go on. So actually, the problem is no one knows. According to some accounts, this war ended last year. Or it might end in 5 days from now, or it could go on. But that is going to affect many things, including the rupee, and like Rajiv talked about, the companies which do long-term planning. How do you do long-term planning? And Mr. Manian, because you finance, organizations across sectors, and the rupee is of great concern. And again, which way it will go depends on how long the war goes. So how do you really, how do you do this now?
Like Rajiv mentioned, the narrative has changed 4 times in the last 1 year, right?
Actually, the narrative may have changed after we started this panel discussion.
Yeah, you never know. After we go out from here, the narrative is different.
Yes.
But on a serious note, I think I often tell my team that, my friend Amish here rates companies AA, AAA. So I have a concept of a AAA.
Yes.
And when I say AAA, I mean agile, astute, and agile. Agile, astute, the third will come to me.
Okay.
So basically, I think the concept of long-range planning is out of the window, right? I think you have to be prepared, you have to be agile, you have to keep changing your plans as the thing evolves, as the environment evolves. And therefore, I would say this is the time for agility. And you asked for rupee, what will happen to the rupee? Just a comment on that. Of course, there must be economists here who understand it better. But at least I think overall, we are at a better starting point today than we have been at times of other crises. I mean, whether it is the forex reserve situation, the financial sector stability, corporate leverage, or many factors like that, or the general momentum in the economy. So I think we are at a better starting point here. Yes. And I am only assuming that here we have some wiggle room to manage this situation. For example, our current account deficit is at 0.8%.
Yes.
And I don't think, even at 1.52, I don't think there is a panic button to be pressed. So I think there is enough wiggle room, and I am hopeful that the war will end in time, and this situation will play out a bit and may get slightly worse. Will we be 7.5% growth rate? Maybe not, maybe 7. Yes. But 7 is not bad. So I am still of the view that there will be some method to this madness and not complete madness.
Yes, yes. 7 will also be quite good, actually. And we do have a bit of a cushion, although one former deputy governor of RBI said that we need 1 trillion of reserves to be able to manage the currency. But let's see how this goes. But Rahul, sorry.
If it goes on for a year, you will need that much, but I'm assuming it doesn't.
Yes, yes. Rahul, so at BCG, you have a window to how organizations operate, and you have an insight into all the concerns as well. How do you see the situation panning out? All the things about, will it become more local for local? Will things need to, will supply chains will supply chains have to be reassessed, rejigged? Do you need to move closer to your market? Will regionalization increase? How do you see things developing from here?
So I think, firstly, this is at a macro level, we are seeing the reverse of globalization. And we are seeing the shift from efficiency to resilience. If you look at what the 2000s did for us, is everybody focused on highest efficiency. Let's buy from where is cheapest. Let's make where is cheapest. Let's get the lowest cost, right? And let's get as global as it gets, right? I think with the emerging geopolitical scenario where relationships are bilaterally driven and not multilaterally driven, and things are very uncertain, what it has led, and it's not, while we're talking a lot about the recent war, this has been going on for the last 5 years. If you look at the first Trump era and the tariffs started there, from there to COVID, and then the chip shortage, and then the war in Russia war, and then now the Iran war, and in between all the barriers, right? All that has done is shifted the mind of people from solving from lowest cost to business continuity, to ensuring supply security, to ensuring contingency planning, to risk management and scenario-based approach to business planning. And that's a pretty big shift, right? Nobody wants to have all eggs in one basket. Nobody wants to ensure, one small thing can hurt, right? The other thing that therefore it has done is a very agile approach. I think Mr. Manian used the word agile. All planning is agile. Obviously, India is blessed that our local markets are strong, right? And any Indian company sitting here, right, first wants to make its business plan on domestic demand, which given the strong tailwind of young population and demographic dividend is quite strong. Right?
Yes.
Having said that, international markets offer a big opportunity for us, right? And I think with the FTAs, the way they are evolving, and the bilateral relationships, we will have enough markets where we'll have good window to supply from India and leverage our large manufacturing base. There will be markets which will create protectionist approaches, and we will need to be local there to serve. So it will not be one size fits all. It will vary based on what geography, what protectionist measures, and what kind of relationships we have. Right?
Yes.
One
Yes.
other point I would add is also what we are doing is to, given the need for resilience at even a country level, I think everything that we import, we want to localize to the extent that it makes sense. And that's important, whether it is the renewable industry or the capital goods industry or now the semiconductor electronics industry and defense also. I think that creates additional opportunities. So one would say, yes, we are taking care of our own needs, but at the same time, it's a pretty dynamic world out there.
Yes, yes, yes. So just when we thought that countries' boundaries will disappear and capital and labor will flow freely, the opposite is going to happen in the reversal of globalization. But Mr. Pai, how does that affect you? What I hear, I heard somewhere else is that if you were to manufacture steel, right, it's not, I know, but if we were to, I'm giving the steel example because it is top of the mind for me, that to make it in India costs about half of what it costs to make it in the US. But someone is saying, come to US, invest here and make it here. So how does this reversal of globalization pan out for you? And as the CEO, how do you manage this situation where there are concerns, there could be hard decisions, but you have to take everyone along as well?
So I think that, we have a big Indian business and a big international business. So the point that became very clear to us, and as Rahul was saying, this has been going on since 2019 when COVID started. So first thing that has become clear to us is that your supply chains have to be regional. So none of Hindalco or Novelis's supply chains go far beyond the region that we work in, and we have tried to maintain that. The second thing that we have also realized is that as you said, risk management and business continuity are becoming very important. So for us, right from the COVID times, we looked at our critical, the way I look at it is, if an aluminum smelter has to run or an aluminum rolling plant, what can stop our plant? And then we work backwards to say, okay, how can we build mitigation measures for that? So during COVID, none of our smelters stopped. And since any one of those crises, the first thing I tell our people is nothing will shut down. We have planned for this. So I think that from a management point of view, it is very important in these times not to show signs of wavering. This is not a time that you say, I'm going to change my strategy. It's not. You should have thought about this long before. And I think that in crisis like this, I actually look at it as an opportunity where people will say, should I be buying Hindalco or some other companies? So the differentiation also becomes clearer in a crisis.
Okay, but you wouldn't want the answer to be some other company, right?
I hope not.
But, you talk about risk management, Mr. Pai. Does it need to become more granular, more defined, more top of the mind for a CEO? And at the same time, you can't really fib your way, right? You can't tell your people that everything is fine because everything is not fine. So in your discussions at the management level, does risk management now become more important thing, more granular as well?
No, as I said, for us, we have been for the last 3 or 4 years, because of multiple shocks to the system, been focusing on that. And risk management now is not something that you do at a very high level to your audit committee. You have this standard slide and you show 10 things. No, I think that the risk register that we look at in Hindalco is At the plant level, there's a risk register. At the regional level, there's a risk register. And at the corporate level. So you have to be very granular, and you have to have mitigation plans for each one of your risks, especially supply chain risk, transportation risk, customer risk, credit risk. All these now are, for us, a regular part of the way we operate. Because in these difficult times, big companies survive, but many of my smaller customers will run into cash problems because copper and aluminum is very expensive, working capital requirements are high. So I think these are some of the things that have now become what I call the normal way of working.
Right, right. And like you're saying, all this chaos after chaos has made us more resilient, including COVID. I thought the biggest benefit of COVID was that journalists can now work from home also. It taught us to do video conferencing and stuff, but there are concrete advantages for running operations also. Rajiv, coming back to you, this is also a time when governments, for governments, it's always a sensitive time, right? It can be tempting to splurge, to spend more to protect our citizens. But, Mr. Mehta is sitting there. He will probably punish governments that splurge. Mr. Mehta is there, yeah? His organization will punish the government if they spend more. They will say, lack of fiscal discipline, your rating will go down. So, what do we do then? How do we balance the demands of the time?
I think that's a hard question. I do want to respond though to what Mr. Manian said.
Yes.
I think India has very, very strong macroeconomic fundamentals, so I think that helps. But I think our current account deficit is something that we should watch out for very carefully. For the first 11 months, just our merchandise trade deficit was $330 billion. So I think 320, 330. So I think it's, and if you actually go to the root cause of why all this disruption is happening, geopolitical, I think trade deficit and supply chain resilience are the core, if you actually say why this has happened.
Yes.
So for countries, and I would say I must credit this government, even through COVID and otherwise, and I think particularly what I'm seeing now, I think the response was very quick. I think they set up committees which were across ministries, especially I would say the petroleum and in some of the manufacturing and mining and others, whatever the issues were on whether it was to do with individual households to corporates who are consuming some of these products or fertilizer or whatever else. I think the response has been almost on a daily basis and very agile. I think they, by instinct, if you look at it, I think this government, from a macroeconomic standpoint, is very, very prudent. And I think, yes, you have to be very careful that, you don't let the ship sink. But I would say macroeconomic discipline has to be very, very important. And you have to make, unfortunately, at many times, you have to make the hard choices. Good news is the fiscal deficit track record is good. There are still a lot of places where they can bring in money. As he rightly said, balance sheets right across are pretty strong. So I would say that whilst, so for example, even if you look at the way the government did the gas allocation and what they were asking us every day, if you are doing 70% or 60% allocation to a manufacturing company, tell us if this will stop the company or they will operate at a lower level. If it will stop the company, then we'll think of reallocating gas.
Yes.
But if it's going to reduce this thing, then actually we need to, this is our prioritization list. Even when they are spending money, you will see them holding back some of the expenditure in other areas. And I think you can already see that. I think there are instructions there and everything. And even if you look at the entire budget making process over the last 4 or 5 years, there are always buffers in the budget making process.
Yes.
We always say that the tax revenues have not been properly provisioned, or some of the other streams, other incomes have not been there. And I think there's a natural sense of balancing that is there. But if this continues for a longer time, the fisc will definitely, to some extent,
right,
get challenged. But till now, I think it still seems to be okay, and the government is handling this in a
Yes.
very agile.
This supply chain thing that you spoke about, it keeps coming up even before the session began in the networking lounge. I think everybody is concerned with the supply chain thing. Just want to tap Rahul for a minute about rejigging the supply chain before I come to you, Mr. Manian. And Mr. Pai, I would like to talk about technology and how it is changing your operations a little bit. But Rahul, what is really the way forward for supply chain management or re-management, should we say? Will it be local for local, or you know, how do you really see this thing evolving?
So I think there are multiple facets, right? First facet is, you have to go upstream and see where the core material comes from, right? And you saw what happened with the critical minerals, right? There are countries which are advantaged with some minerals, some which are not. You're seeing what is happening with oil right now and LPG, LNG right now. So it's very important that at a country level, our critical resources, which are important for business, excellence, execution, continuity, we have control on. Control does not mean we need to own in the country, but we have alliances, we have connects enough to walk through any crisis, right? Then, as an individual level, right, as each company, you need to have created, as I think Mr. Pai mentioned, enough regional, local supplies, because in today's world, it's hard for material to travel, right? You have to create multiple supplies, not single source of supply, right? You have to think through, as much as you think about cost and vendor quality, you have to think of geopolitical considerations. You have to think of localization factors. Today, if you look at, in most industries, there is a very strong push to localize not just the end product, but the entire value chain, because that's the only way job creation happens and true value addition happens.
Yes.
So if you take, for example, EMS as a space, right? We started to assemble the products here, but that's the start, right? Now we have to go upstream and get all the components and the chips and the PCBs and the fabs, everything get done here, right? And that's the way industries develop, and that's the way you will create enough jobs, enough supply security, but it needs time, and you need a full ecosystem to develop, and not just one single point in time, right? If I go back to the Maruti movement in auto industry, one industry where we have good resilience, right? I think it is not just one company. It is a full ecosystem full of large companies, SMEs, financiers, suppliers, and the evolution. And that's how we need to, industry by industry, think of building an ecosystem.
Yes. Thanks, Rahul. Mr. Manian, in many ways, you provide the fuel that drives many organizations and industries. So when you do that, how do you make your assessments? And many of the things that Mr. Memani talked about and what Rahul is talking about, those must be parameters when you assess where to put your money. So what are the things that you appreciate or reward in these matters?
No, I think when we look at, like I said earlier, today corporate India is, in that sense, from leverage point of view, is in very good shape. So one thing it does is low leverage. What it does is it keeps the system safe, and for bankers to, it makes it easier for bankers to lend. But having said that, I think it's key now when you assess corporates to see what is the impact of these changes that happen to corporates, and the sensitivity to some of these variables which were earlier probably brushed aside. Now the relatively low probability, high impact events, I think, have come more center stage in evaluation, right? And that's what you need to see.
Right.
And that's what bankers do. Just coming to, I would like to say a few things more on something that Rajiv was mentioning. I think what this has taught us, this situation has taught us, is the definition of sovereignty has changed, right? Earlier, sovereignty was about border security. Now it's about energy security, data security.
Yes.
There are many other factors which have come into play. And I think from policy perspective that you were asking, I think what countries need to work is how to improve sovereignty in multiple facets of sovereignty have come to light.
Yes.
And the policy has to really address going forward.
Indeed.
And we can't take some of these food security,
Definitely.
Energy security, all this lightly.
Definitely.
And sorry, just the word I was missing, alert, agile and astute is the
Alert, agile, and astute. Excellent. That is the AAA. Mr. Mehta, the AAA rating gets redefined. I'm getting constant reminders to wrap this up, but very quickly, I can't wrap up before I turn to Mr. Pai, because a lot of people think that technological disruption is only disrupting the IT and tech industries, which is not true. We were talking the other day, and you said how your old factories required high school pass people, your new factories require engineers, and probably 1/10 of what you required earlier. But how do you see that, the tech disruption panning out for a manufacturing sector like yours?
So I think in a manufacturing organization, what has happened is really the machine learning part of AI, not the Gen AI. The machine learning part has really started to take over the shop floors. So you do, as I said, before we used to run shop floors with maximum maybe ITI or high school. Today, most of our plants require 1/10 the people, maybe even less, and they have to be a minimum engineering degree because they are dealing with a very high degree of automation and digitalization. And that is what is changing the whole manufacturing business. And I think that what you're going to see is more productivity, better quality, which is what Indian manufacturing actually needs. But at the same time, the problem that we are seeing is that the structure of the organization has to now change to keep sync with the technology change that has happened. We don't need that many layers of management anymore. The organizations have to get flatter. Decision making is coming closer to the shop floor. And I think that there is a whole middle level management that at least I'm seeing that are like completely frightened about what's going to happen to their jobs because they have to get reskilled. So I think the technology, as it's coming in, is creating that anxiety among organizational structures. And we are going to go through a little bit of tough time to sort that out.
Yes. Thank you all. This was a great discussion, lovely insights. Thank you all for being a part of this Forbes India Leadership Awards. Guys, a round of applause for our panelists.